Hi everyone. Our today's guest is a film producer, consultant, and advisor based in LA. She's the founder and CEO of Magic Studios. Please welcome Kimber Lim. Hi Kimber. How are you?
Hi, good. I'm very good. Nice to see you guys.
Nice to
Nice
see
meeting
you.
you.
How's everything in LA? I know you've been on lockdown for a while.
It seems like it's been pretty much the whole year, but we went back on lockdown 2 weeks ago, and in another week they will reevaluate if they're going to extend the stay-at-home order. So we'll see.
So you're working from home, apparently. Can you tell us more about your work and background?
I'm a producer here. I have a pretty extensive background in entertainment. I've been living in LA since college, and I live here with my husband and 3 daughters. So
Wow.
I've been in the business for a long time. So I started working, after college as an associate producer and making commercials and doing training videos and being in physical production. And, and I did everything from picking up donuts at 5 o'clock in the morning to hiring writers and the crew and overseeing, the production as well as post-production. And so, my career, I kind of ended up here in a very untraditional way. I started to follow technology at the time when production was evolving, and we started getting into digital production. And so I naturally transitioned from producing physical to going into interactive media and producing everything from games, and then transitioning into film and focusing on digital production, which was visual effects at the time. So I worked on dozens of projects, everything from Spider-Man to Mission Impossible to The Walking Dead. And I was at Digital Domain for several years working on Tron and 2012, which was a disaster movie, which I feel like I'm living right now. But
How did you get in the major mainstream as a Korean woman?
when I first started, it was through a random connection, and I decided to make the transition from doing interactive media to film. And a friend of mine it asked me to help them on a show. And it was a smaller visual effects studio. When I started going into that field, another person, and it all really is through connections, recommended that I talk to another person over at Paramount, and because she was looking for someone to help her on the visual effects side for Mission Impossible, and that kind of jump started my career in visual effects. And soon thereafter, I started to work on and got trained to work on some large format IMAX, their first scripted visual effects film called T-Rex, Back to the Crustacean. And then just one thing, and then I pretty much never stopped working.
You worked with some of high-profile film directors such as Michael Bay and Bong Joon-ho. What was it like working with them?
They're quite inspiring. Michael Bay, his company ended up investing into my VR company that I started. And even then, we were helping him do the first VR commercial for Transformers 5. He has an amazing work ethic, and he's very good with just inspiring his crew and the talent, and being able to create these massive scenes and control that, which is such an amazing thing to watch. Bong Joon-ho has his own style. The amazing talent that he has, not just from a creative standpoint or a story standpoint, is his relationship with the crew. And it's something that I don't see a lot of in the US, where he knows exactly what he wants to see on screen. But he has an amazing ability to get the talent so motivated to work their best and to give everything because he listens to the crew. And when you feel heard, you want to do everything, and you want that director to succeed because you want that director to do more, right? And be a part of their next project.
You probably learned a lot.
Yes, I'm still learning. I'm still learning a lot. I've now transitioned into my own production company, and I decided to make that transition to produce my own projects because I want to work on projects now where the stories are more personal to me, and it's something that, you know, I feel compelled to be a part of, to be told. My background has always been these bigger blockbuster type, you know, series or films, and whether it's a big project or a small project, I want to be able to produce and develop them myself, which is where I currently am.
Kymber, you worked both in Korea and the United States. What's the biggest difference between two countries in terms of culture and system?
The US has such a long history of cinema, and any kind of evolution of that or deviations from that is set with very certain standards and practices. And most of that is managed by, you know, unions and lawyers and agents and studio system, which can be quite cumbersome, right? The barriers to entry into Hollywood, it has always been quite high. And that is because of the understanding of what the Hollywood system is and how difficult it is for anyone who's new to come and learn all of these things, right? Because there's no, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of books and manuals and stuff like that, but unless you're actually in it and working on it, you really don't realize what that is. And in Korea, my perception is that things change a lot more quickly, and Koreans seem to be more comfortable embracing change. I think they're so used to having to reimagine and recreate and restructure, and, you know, and they're always constantly looking at how to make everything better, you know, from food to products to, you know, so I feel like that evolution seems to be faster for me from what I see. I think the film industry in Korea, though, seems to have a harder time changing. I think they're more stubborn in some ways, in terms of the way that they want to do things, because they're just used to doing it that way. But that's also quickly changing too. And I think the biggest difference between, you know, the US and Korea is that there are very few directors that are allowed to kind of do whatever they want with the budget of a movie, because they have proven to be able to do that, right? But mostly the producers and directors in the United States have equal responsibility for the success of that movie. And so it's not necessarily as driven by the director as it is in Korea. It seems to me that in Korea, it is very much a director-driven project. And they are the ones that have the most control over the project than, you know, anyone else. And that is also the reason why Korean movies are more unconventional, and I feel that they tell a more honest story, because they're not always encumbered by having to think about, all the things that are influenced either by a studio or by a producer or by the financier. So that seems to be, the biggest thing. But, when it comes to producing, though, I feel that the US, it's much easier to work with people that you may not have worked with before, because there are so many structures already in place. There's guidelines and structures, and there's contracts and agreements, and there's a lot of things that kind of tell you, like, this is and isn't what we're supposed to be doing on a project, and those are all pretty much standardized. But in Korea, I don't think that, they need to have other things in place, other guidelines in place, and those are mostly relationship based. I feel like that trust needs to have built over, a long association. So it's harder to work with people you haven't known for a long time, because I think those systems are not in place. But I feel like all of this is changing.
You see more Koreans and Korean Americans are active and visible on the big screen as well as behind the camera these days. So the whole industry is changing and becoming more global.
Yeah, and the pandemic has actually been an incredible force for that change, because now the streaming services that are online have really lowered that entry into being a content creator, because there's so many of them and there's so much content that's needed. But we're also coming off of the heels of Parasite too, right? Like, there's a really exciting time for Korea and Korea representation and Korea, content, interest in Korea. I could not be happier that it was director Bong that won that.
And you were at the Oscars with him that night. How was your emotions?
It was unbelievable. I never thought that this would happen in my lifetime. It is something that you truly do wish for, right? I mean, this is the first Korean non-English language to win the Best Picture nomination. It's one thing to win an international film Oscar. It's another one to just sweep the Oscars. And so I was happy when they announced that the screenplay got the Oscar. But then when director Bong won the Best Director award, I knew that he was going to win Best Picture. It was such an unbelievable, magical moment. All of the things that we struggled with, right? Being Korean, and now I'm going to cry, and being Korean American and having worked so hard, and you finally feel like, that all of that was validated in some way. So it wasn't, it was a huge accomplishment for Korea, but it was, for somebody that's working in the business that's Korean, we could not have been more proud that something like that has happened.
The hardworking and you are true to yourself, you will get rewarded someday.
I think it's an amazing time, and I certainly don't want this time to pass. I want to be able to, be able to build on this and at least continue to push forward, and tell more, authentic stories that are true to us, right? That represent us.
Did you have any obstacle working as a Korean woman in Hollywood?
As a Korean, I think part of our culture is also the thing that may have helped and maybe hurt me in some ways, right? Because we're taught to, be obedient and not challenge or question authority and our leaders, and to be quiet and not talk unless somebody asks us a question. And like these are all things that were kind of ingrained in us, you know, at least as I was growing up. And it was really, you know, put on us that because we're a minority, you have to work hard. You have to work harder than anybody else. And then my dad would also tell me, because I'm a girl, I also have to work harder than my brothers if I want to, you know,
Yeah.
be successful. And so, but what that actually tells us, though, what all of those things say in a culture is that it tells us that we are inferior, right? We don't have a place or to speak our mind or our opinion. We're not even supposed to have an opinion. That thinking has now definitely changed. Everyone has learned a lot from Black Lives Matter movement. We've learned a lot from the Me Too movement. You know, we're now getting support. We're having these conversations and we're getting the support, you know, not from just each other, but from white men and from board members that say this is not okay, from, you know, diversity representations that say we need more. So we're realizing now that it's time to, you know, speak out and take a stand and do something and support each other publicly.
Kymber, is that one of the reasons why you set up a nonprofit organization for Korean Americans working in Hollywood?
Funny enough that there hasn't been a Korean American entertainment network organizations before. There are other there are plenty of Korean American organizations, right? That covers leaders or that covers, you know, other types of industries, but nothing that is specific to this business. And there's plenty of Asian entertainment organizations too, but we're all kind of lumped into this Asian category, which definitely helps the overall movement. But our feeling is, and some of this is sparked from conversations about Parasite. Believe it or not, when Parasite came, and you know, and Miss Mickey Lee over at CJ, who was organizing and campaigning for that project, there wasn't a group that she could reach out to and was like, help me do this.
Yeah.
You know, and that is kind of the reason why, or one of the reasons why there really should be an organized group, right? People that try now to look very specifically about helping other Korean American, very specifically Korean American filmmakers, talent, and really doing what we can to help them. So I organized a small group of executives in the business that are all Korean American. And we started Korean American Leaders in Hollywood, which is KALH, also pronounced Cal. And what we're trying to do is be able to network with each other, to support each other, but also launch some programs next year where we will be having a mentorship program. We're building a short film fund so we can fund other filmmakers and their short stories to tell more Korean content, Korean American stories specifically, and try to at least just get going.
So there are so many Koreans who want to go abroad and try something new, either finding a job in a foreign country or setting up a business there. So as someone who has experienced it already, what kind of advice would you like to give to young Koreans who want to venture abroad?
I honestly think it's very simple, and I tell my kids this all the time. If you want to do something, just do it. Don't think too
Yeah.
much. Because and it's the same thing, like my oldest child, who's very, very creative, and she is interested in everything. And she will tell me probably 1,000 ideas a day. Oh, I have this idea. And I always tell her that ideas are worthless if you do not put them into action.
So
So
take
take an action. Like, you have to execute. It's all about the execution of that, whether it's you want to move or you want to try something new. You can research all you want. You can talk yourself out of it. But if you want to do something, you just have to do it, and you're going to be smart enough to figure it out.
Thank you so much for today to inspire us and sharing your story. I'm sure a lot of us are learning a lot from you. I'm so inspired already from your story.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for your
absolutely.
wonderful stories, and I'm sure our viewers appreciate that very much.
You're
Thank-
so welcome. And thank you guys for putting this together, because I think that it's an amazing thing that you guys did. Your idea that you executed on is going to be great.